Hi, Sam. It's amazing to have you on Consciousness Engineering. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, hi, Roshan. Thank you.
I was just telling people that one of the things that I absolutely loved about you is that when a large group of people came to me after the last Awesomeness Fest in Europe, and I asked them, what was the biggest highlight of Awesomeness Fest? Many of them spoke about the incredible inner experiences they had during the daily morning meditations that you led.
Woo.
That was mind-blowing to hear people talk about feelings of energy flowing through their body, things flipping a switch in their head, and them feeling enlightened the entire day. So really look forward to hearing more of your wisdom and what you can share with this list. Now, every time I start these interviews, I always ask the person, our special guest, one of two questions, and I've already briefed you on this, so you know what I'm going to ask. Tell me either something so we can get to know you, either what keeps you up at night, or what gets you out of bed in the morning.
I think it's the same thing. And that is like a relentless hunger to create. I'm really excited when I get to create new projects and share what I feel is my message, to share with the world in as many ways possible and to keep leveling up how I'm doing that, who I'm playing with to do that. So, being at A-Fest was amazing because I got to reach so many people who were so open, receptive, and really like high level people, very intelligent people, but very heart centered, and that we could have these amazing experiences together. So that's what keeps me awake at night, wakes me up in the morning. I'm about ready to do a TV show here and it'll be on in the fall. It's a reality TV show, and I'm like, how amazing to get to use that kind of creative storytelling and entertainment to bring a real and powerful message to people that I believe is so necessary to end a lot of the suffering people have around their sexuality and the sexual shadow in the world.
Beautiful. And I cannot wait to see your reality TV show, your books, your courses, everything else you're creating. Because Sound is definitely one of the most extraordinary teachers I've come across here at Mind Valley with all the events and the online classes we do. So today, our topic is going to be something kind of taboo. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about Tantra. We're going to blow the lid on a lot of things that don't normally get discussed in these type of personal growth calls. Yet it's kind of funny, right, Sam? Because sex is one of the core things about being human. Even Esther Hicks, in her book, in one of her books, I think it was Law of Attraction or the Power of Deliberate Emotion, said that one of the most powerful experiences why souls take on the human experience is
Mm.
just to experience sex.
Yes, and so it's been blamed. So actually, what's happened is we've blamed desire and sexual desire for the human experience. So in religion they say, okay, you're here on this planet, and this planet is kind of screwed. We have suffering, we have problems. You're sick. It's the problem is you're here, and what got you here was sex. So that's why there's even in religion's been such an emphasis on celibacy being a higher calling. And I really think we need to flip that around and start to realize that one of the most beautiful things we can ever do is have that experience of connection and sex with another person. And what if we made heaven on earth here instead of all these ideas?
So let's get started with some of the beliefs that you wanted to have us adopt or suggest that we adopt about sexuality.
Yeah, so one of I'm really passionate about this, and I'm excited that we're getting to talk about it because I feel like even as a teacher talking about sex, sometimes people don't take you as seriously. Again, sex goes in some other corner or some other box, and so to bring sex to the forefront of our conversation, and it's so important because it's affecting our lives every day. I just got back to America from A Fest, and I was in a meeting, and we were talking about how STDs are on the rise with millennials. And there's, this huge hypocrisy because, Facebook and Twitter have a morality that you can't have an ad for a condom company. You can't have an ad for safe sex. I can't run an ad about tantric sex, as a higher way of having sex and connection, because they say that's all porn. So the word sex equals porn. But we all know what a lot of people are really doing on Twitter and Facebook is they're exchanging naked pictures, they're hooking up, and so now we're having this spread of STDs with millennials because it's that same morality that we've had in religion is now actually proliferating in social media, which we think is so free and open.
Do you think that this morality is, in a way, a rule?
Absolutely. I think, to me, all they have to do at Facebook or Twitter is pay somebody to sit and say, that's porn, this is sex education. That's porn, this is a safe sex ad. And when we don't do that, the repercussions of us as a society and individuals not doing that is that there's a rise in STDs, is that there's more sexual violence.
But what is the root cause of this? Why do human beings, why does religion, why do cultures have so much negative connotation around sex? Why is there so much dogmatic shame?
Well, first of all, religion didn't always. So, I traveled to India and I studied these older tantric goddess worship, and it's in the south of India. It's called Shaktiism. And when we see the oldest images of gods and goddesses, they have breasts, they have vaginas, they have penises. And there was no shame involved in that. And there even used to be temples where people would have sex in the temples as a form of worship. And then there was a shift where it became more patriarchal. And at that point, now we have, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. As any logical person goes, well, where's the mother? Where's the female? And to actually have neutered the feminine is to neuter sexuality out of religion. So the point at which it became masculine religion, the masculine emphasized cutting sex out and blaming actually sexuality and original sin on women. Like Eve in the Garden of Eden, she's the one who screwed everything up. But it wasn't always in all religions, but it has been in the more patriarchal religions and is prevalent in our world now, in all our societies.
So what you're saying is that sex used to be something that was normal, that was worship, that was a part of life, spiritual practices itself. But over history, this whole idea has been muted.
Yes, well, but if you think about it, now we live in a world. I grew up Christian. I grew up with a male God. And to even question that and think, oh, maybe there was a female God was blasphemy. But if you turn that around and say, what kind of culture or religion would create, you would completely divorce the feminine, neuter the feminine, and only have a male God. It's completely unnatural to anything. So it's actually like a willful violence to disempower, I think, the feminine energy. And also at that point to put sexuality in a shadow. And I think partially it's because sex is such a powerful thing that people are actually a little frightened of it. Like it's a place where we lose control for a little bit. The most successful people in the world often, are off paying dominatrixes, in private, because that's where they're kind of releasing their sexual shadow.
Now you've traveled all around the world, right? And You've seen different cultural attitudes to sex. You had an amazing quote that I asked if I could put in my book. Tell us about the story, what you've seen. Tell us about that quote, that idea. And then I have another question for you.
Yeah. Well, what I had said is at some point I realized, going to India, and I saw this culture where the women have to cover their bodies more. And I grew up, in a religious cult where I had to cover my body and all the women had to cover their body. And what we were told is, it's for your safety, but also so you don't make men sin. So the men's sexual response was blamed on women. So, if somehow I'm sexy or I'm dressed in a sexy way and the guy gets a boner, then that's the woman's fault, right? So cover her up. And what I found in traveling to India and seeing that is in cultures where women are forced to cover their bodies, it actually creates more sexuality, and that repression leads often to violence. It can lead to rape, and a lot of other problems. And usually the women aren't as educated in cultures where they're forced to cover their bodies, and that kind of morality where we say, then it's like we create the duality for women. This woman's a virgin or a good woman, and this woman's a whore. And then women only have these two choices. You're a virgin or you're a whore. You're the wife or you're the whore. And that's caused so much damage to men and women, is that idea of the virgin whore, complex and splitting ourselves in two. It's like a schizophrenia around our sexuality. And so when I was there, I really thought about how religion then had taken this most powerful energy we have. If you want to control people, then you need to control their sexual energy. And once you've controlled their sexual energy, you're controlling their minds. And so you create the system of morality where instead of anyone fighting you, they say, oh, if morality has changed, like, well, I have the biggest chains and try and put chains on everyone else, and that plays out for women in suppressing other women's sexuality. Oh, she's a whore. Look, I'm not. But, it's creating that system. They're just, the bigger my chains are, the better I am than you. But all these people are just, they haven't even questioned why they were taught those things. And a lot of times it's leading to a lot of unhappiness, it's just really sad to me that people don't question why they were given morality. And instead of questioning it, they're proud of being kept in those moral chains.
Well, see, what's really interesting about that is that morality changes with almost every generation. Morality isn't a fixed code. I don't believe in things such as the Ten Commandments. I mean, even if you look at the Bible, you'll see there's so much great wisdom in there. There's so much awful, silly little crap, like you cannot wear cloth made from two different fabrics, or
Right.
you can't eat certain types of seafood. Now, morality changes generation to generation to generation to generation to generation. So if you look at India, before the British took over India, women walked around with their breast exposed. The
Yes.
Indian sari, which is a beautiful garment, I grew up in Indian culture. Prior to the 17th century, when the British came, women walked around in India with their breast exposed. If you go to South India, where I think you've been, you'll see the roofs of temples covered with figures engaged in sex acts. That's why the Kama Sutra was part of the religion. The Brits, who had a different code towards sexuality, came and said, nope, can't do this, got to cover up. The temples got covered by jungles and were forgotten until several hundred years ago when they were rediscovered. And things such as the Kama Sutra became normalized, right? Kama Sutra, I think, right now is one of the top 10 most downloaded books on iBook. So it seems to me that everything we think we know about sex, about morality, about even ideas such as the way we have sex, marriage, monogamy, polyamory, are simply trends. Everything is a trend. So, what most people here, most people of our generation, grow up with, regardless of your culture, you got to understand that it's a cultural trend. Where I live in Malaysia, we see those same trends. Right now in Malaysia, most Muslim women, so we're a very multicultural country. We have Muslim people, Buddhist people, Christian people. Right now, the trend among Muslim women in Malaysia is to completely cover their heads. In
Right.
20 years ago, that wasn't the trend. Everyone walked around with their hair exposed. So it seems that whatever we think is moral is only what we think and will be completely different for our children and was completely different for our grandchildren.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but even your example of that in a culture where the women are having to cover themselves a lot of times, again, that's like the chains, and then it's like, well, I'm covering myself more. I'm a better woman. I'm, a more virtuous woman. But, they don't even question who enforced wearing it in the first place. And it's really a sexualization of women's bodies to force them to cover themselves.
So
Like
this
you
is
said, in the tribal areas, they're naked or topless.
so this is what I want to ask, right? And for the people listening, remember, if you aren't getting pissed off in some way by this conversation, or disturbed, or feeling uncomfortable, then it means you aren't really learning. So the more uncomfortable you're feeling, whether you disagree with me or disagree with Sam, or feel that we are criticizing culture and religion and tradition, that's good. It means that we are challenging thought, right? And that's the whole point of hacking models of reality. So Sam, let me ask you this. Culture aside, and you grew up in a highly religious culture. I've heard about your background, highly religious, like fundamentalist evangelical Christian.
Yeah.
Culture and religion aside, how should women be behaving?
How should what?
How should women be behaving towards their bodies and sexuality? If you could create your own utopian society, what would that look like?
First of all, I would teach every woman how to masturbate properly. I would teach every woman how to love her body. So one of the things is I teach Tantra, and I'll have someone go, oh, I can't do that. I don't have a partner. And I was like, well, do you have a vagina? You don't need you were born with one. I think you need a user's manual, like Vagina 101. It's like, to me, crazy. It's like this idea, what if somebody gave you a car and you always got in the back seat and waited for a driver? So you're just like, somebody's sitting in your drive. Well, I don't have the driver. The driver isn't here. And that's the way a lot of women are around sex is like, oh, I have to wait, and men too, but I have to wait for someone else to be. Well, actually, that's not true. I think men are very good at masturbating, yeah. But a lot of women still have so much shame, and just a third of women have never had an orgasm, another third rarely, and that's 2/3 of women who either have never had an orgasm or don't know how their bodies work. So I teach women how to drop their body shame, how to discover their own bodies and their own orgasmic triggers, because I just think that's just part of being alive and being a woman. And then I'll say that to some women, and they're so uncomfortable. Like the word masturbation is a dirty word, but it's like, well, if you're having sex and being penetrated, I can't imagine why it wouldn't be important to learn how your body works in the first place. So that's what I mean. We have all these crazy ideas to disempower us. Like it's a very disempowering. Somebody taught, women to be disempowered around self-pleasure, loving their own bodies, masturbation. And then they don't question it. Or they just carry it around and never really go find the tools to change it. People are buying books on self-help for everything, how to get rich, how to da-da-da-da-da. And very few people really go, I'm going to deal with my sexuality. And yet that even Freud said that's the root of everything going on. So any incongruities you have in your life are coming from usually, going to the sexual energy, the subconscious desires, and really, learning. So learning how to work with those. So that's what I encourage. Every woman needs to learn how to masturbate. Teenagers should be taught how to masturbate properly instead of being shamed about masturbating.
So a large part of it is getting rid of the shame and teaching us how to masturbate.
Yeah, how to masturbate and then how to relate and make
now,
love.
What about men in this utopian society, free of restricting religious or moral codes, which are all made up anyway? How would men behave?
I think that men, if they lived in a society where women were able to be more free in their bodies and women's bodies weren't turned into sex objects for men, then I think that when men saw a naked woman, they might be able to say, that's really beautiful. And maybe that woman wants to, that's beautiful. Maybe I got a boner. And maybe that woman wants to do something with me. Maybe she doesn't. But because there wouldn't be any shame and suppression, there would be a higher level of sexual literacy. I think then there would be less of that suppression, shame, and violence even. A lot of men, just don't know how to even interact around that when they get aroused by women and women's bodies. Because there's been so much shame, there hasn't been any good education or open, clear conversations between men and women about arousal. I always say, I think sexuality should be free for all of us, but the choices you make define who you are and the life that you live. Those are the karmas, right? Nobody's free. I believe karma isn't a belief system. Karma is literally just like a scientific experiment. If I do that, that's the result. So, for example, if you have a married man and he's aroused by another woman, then he could feel, sexual arousal is normal. I feel my sexual arousal and I'm going to make a series of choices of what to do with that. I can either my wife's okay with that and we're open and I talk to her, or my wife may not be okay with that. I don't talk to her about it. I'm still going to approach that woman, or I feel that energy and I'm not going to try and sexually approach that woman. But the actual energy response in our body should not have shame. When we shame sexual response, that's the problem. And what happens is the opposite of what we say will happen. We say, let's shame sexual energy and response, and then people will behave better. No, people behave worse when you put shame around sexual response because, they're so pent up. Like I said, then it's more explosive when it actually comes out or when they act out on it. So to me, in that utopic society, there wouldn't be rape. There wouldn't be, molestation of children. We wouldn't have STDs because we would be educated about it. We'd be able to talk to each other, have a conversation about our bodies, sex, protection, all of it.
So it seems to me that one of the most beautiful aspects about being human has been infused with so much shame and guilt. Interestingly, again, many spiritual philosophers say that on the scale of human emotion, shame and guilt are among the lowest things you can experience, just a little bit above hate. Yet it seems that sex has been associated with so much shame and guilt. And this could be the cause of why there's so much sexual dysfunction in the world. From rape to men who feel highly insecure to women who feel highly insecure and untrained in terms of how to deal with their own sexuality. We've taken morality and warped it into something that's really suppressing one of the most powerful aspects about being human, would you say?
Absolutely. And I think that kind of morality and dogmatic belief is basically saying people are stupid. You say people are stupid, so we have to give them these like black and white rules. Again, we say like, oh, we're concerned about, like men raping women, so women have to cover their bodies. Big black and white rule that actually usually leads to more sexual violence. So, these kinds of moral rules, I think, underestimate our intelligence, and the path to liberation is education, and that we trust that we're inherently good, right? We are inherently good beings, and that we just need to be able to like express, explore, and know who we are, and especially know who we are with sexually and our sexual energy.
Well, I'll put it this way, right? Let's take another aspect of human society that's so important, money. Okay?
Yeah.
If you look at communism, in communism, anything that had to do with wealth was considered taboo.
Right.
My wife grew up in what was then, when she was a kid, part of the Soviet Union. I remember she was telling me about how her grandparents, who were landowners, were captured by the Soviets and shot point blank in the head, murdered because they were landowners, because there was so much shame, guilt, higher power. In that case, Stalin said that money was bad, owning land was bad, entrepreneurism was bad. Right now, all of this seems so absurd to the rest of us. Now, if you look at the way all of society deals with sex, it kind of seems the same.
Yeah.
We've created our version of communism around sexual values. Now, I've spent time with tribal people in the Amazon rainforest. They're called the Achuar. They were just discovered in 1979, and I spent about a week with them, just living with them, drinking what they drink, experiencing their life, doing the type of jungle drugs like ayahuasca that they take. And what is really interesting with the Achuar is that, well, firstly, concepts such as rape and things like that don't seem to exist. People walk around naked, their bodies completely naked. Men and women stay together, raise children. Everything is just really, really, really open. Everything is normal, but they just don't seem to have any issues with sex or sexuality. And so I just think that there is there's a myth in our modern society that's suppressing how we deal with our sexuality. Now, I admit, I don't know what it's meant to look like, but it seems to me that we are living under the equivalent of communism. When it came, communism for money is what we're experiencing right now for sex. So if you had to raise children, let's say a boy and a girl. Now, I know you're the mother of a 22-year-old.
Yes.
Okay, so most of the people listening are adults, and I think this would be a big question. I have a 8-year-old son and a daughter who's going to be 2. How would you raise them to have healthy sexual habits? Now, I don't mean in the utopian society, which is going to be completely different,
Right.
but for the society that they're growing up in, let's say modern America.
Well, first of all, I think we have to be willing to bear our own discomfort or maybe embarrassment to educate our children about sex. Because what a lot of very intelligent people do, not even religious, moralistic people, just people who think they're very open-minded, it's such an uncomfortable subject, or they're embarrassed, so they don't really educate their kids. And if you don't, your kids are going to be educated by porn, other kids, worse than that, maybe sexual predators on the internet. So it's really important to kind of stumble a bit. Like you said, you don't always know, but start to open up these conversations. I'm really passionate about creating new sexual education. And that's one of the projects, what keeps me up, what wakes me up in the morning, keeps me up at night, like things like that. How can we create new images and models of sexuality for ourselves, but especially for our children, that are like, well, so Vision, if you have kids and you said, I think you told me a story, your son asked about something and you went on the internet and helped him find something, right?
Right. My son asked me, why is it that men can pee standing up, but women have to pee sitting down? So I said, well, that's because men have a penis. And then I explained the mechanics. My son and I are really into science, so I explained the mechanics of projectile urination. And then he wanted to know what a vagina looked like. So I asked for permission from his mom. I'm like, Christina, I'm going to be showing Hayden something on the internet. Don't get alarmed. So I went to the internet and I Googled vagina and tried to show Hayden what I thought would be something scientific. Bad mistake. When you Google vagina on the internet, you don't get the equivalent of a scientific textbook. So I
Right.
immediately shut the browser, but at least I tried.
Yeah, but I mean, but at least you tried, and there's that feeling of more openness, and that
Right.
you did that in the world we live in now, not in the utopian society. And he's going to go and interact with other kids at school, some whose parents have other belief systems, some whose parents say that's wrong, and they're have a different set of morality. But you're trying to be as honest and open with him as you can, and I think you kind of have to, as a parent, like at each moment say, this is what's appropriate for them at this age, this is what's appropriate for them at this age, but be willing to be uncomfortable and figure it out, because it won't disappear. They're going to get it from worse places than you.
You're right, Sam. I realize even as we're having this conversation, because we're talking about something that has been associated with taboos and guilt and shame for so long, I'm feeling uncomfortable. And that's why I'm serious. So I can imagine
How are you feeling?
it's because I haven't had any education on this. Like
Mhm.
you teach people tantra, right? That's one topic I've never really studied. Um, I've never studied. I've never studied this. The
Mhm.
courses, the books simply aren't available, and so I know people listening are also feeling uncomfortable. But I really think that's interesting. I'm observing my discomfort. I'm trying to pretend like I have answers, like I know all of this stuff, but deep down inside, it is making me uncomfortable. But that just goes to show that what you're saying is kind of right. There's so much shame, dogmatic ideas, bullshit morality around sex.
Well, and I grew up again in this, on the religious cult, totally covered. I wore a bonnet. I had to
Hmm.
wear dresses to my ankles, and with this idea of very much early virgin whore. That if you're a good woman, you cover yourself. You don't make men want to sin. And I just wasn't. That's how they dressed me, but that's not how God made me. I'll tell you what. Like from a very early age, I just always felt, like I had a lot more sexual energy than that. And I think I told you the story. I had my first orgasm when I was 5, and it was on the swing set pole at school. And I told this to a friend recently, and he's like, I have a 5-year-old daughter. I'm very uncomfortable thinking about this, but I learned how to climb the swing set pole, and I was getting towards the top, and I was like, I felt like I had to pee. So I squeezed my legs together, and then I had this like massive orgasm that was just like the most amazing, mind blowing thing. And then I was like, well, that was awesome. And I did it again. And then I did it again. So I had like multiple orgasms when I was like 5. And I figured it out, and I did it, every day. That was my recess, I'd like pee by myself. But then I, lived growing up on this commune. And then I had sexual abuse, and the sexual abuse in that environment is like, I must have done something to have caused that. It's my fault. Again, what does a woman do to make a man sin, or what does, and so the layers then of shame and inability to seek help and keeping a secret, and it's also very confusing at that age, because there still is pleasure, but it's somebody touched your sexual power when you didn't have choice or boundaries. And that's really,
Right.
sexuality is a free energy, and it does just feel good, but you have to know how to set your own boundaries, and be able to do that. And that's why it's so harmful when children, somebody, like starts activating their sexuality when they can't make a choice yet. But, I grew up with that, and then was told to keep everything a secret, and on top of that was told, now don't be sexy. Don't make out with guys. Da, da, da. I wasn't given any sexual education. In fact, I was like, we turned the TV off if anything about sex came on the TV, even if it was on like 60 Minutes. It was like, turn off the TV. They're talking about sex. And of course, my parents thought that would keep me from, having sex early, And I went and ran away from my religious boarding school at 17 and got pregnant. So it's like, again, these repressions and moralities work against us and often do the opposite thing that we're trying to achieve.
You know, I had I realized due to morality, due to religious codes, I also had a very unhealthy idea about sex. For example, growing up, I believed that sex before marriage was wrong. So my
Right.
entire teenage life, I never had a girlfriend. Even when my first few years at college, never experienced it because I believed it was wrong. Yet I saw
Right.
everyone else doing it and I was pissed off. And
Well,
so,
and and then at least you are, a lot of people take that anger. Well, I mean, there was a whole story in Santa Barbara where somebody took all that pent up sexual rage and like shot a bunch of people.
yeah, and if I think back, one of the biggest disservices that my culture and my religion did for me is making sex seem wrong, is putting that bullshit idea in my head that it's only something you experience when you're married. I think about all the men and women who then end up getting into dysfunctional marriages or marriages where the sex absolutely sucks because they've
And they can't talk
never
about
right, or they go through early divorce because they there's this statistic, right, which I thought was absolutely interesting. If you look at America and you turn America into a map showing the most religious states and the least religious states, guess which states have the highest rate of divorce and rape? It's the most religious states.
it. Yeah.
You've experienced that in that religious commune. And
Right.
even I come from Indian culture, and I'm sure you've read about the mass demonstrations in India a few years back because of rape. India has an abnormally high number of rape statistics.
Let me tell you a quick story about it because I've been going to India for 8 years, and when I
Hmm.
first started going, no one talked about rape at all. And then about 3 years ago, there was this huge incident of the Delhi rape case because there was a
Right.
girl who was raped on a bus by multiple people, and it got caught up in the international news circuit, and suddenly there was all this attention, and I actually got really excited because people were talking about it, and we have to talk about. We don't have the answers yet. We have to rip the scab, lift the rock up and look at all the nasty shit to find new paradigms so that we have less rape and violence. But we won't have the answers first. We just have to start looking at it. And so suddenly there's a conversation in India where there'd been no conversation. And I was watching a TV show at night, and this woman was on, and she was saying that like a few years before that, her daughter had been molested by her own father, that woman's husband. And she wanted to stop it. So she actually went to the police to tell them that. And in court, a judge said to her, "It is impossible for a father to do that to his daughter. Therefore, you're a liar and you're going to jail." So A, that's mind blowing because again, when we create these systems of denial, rape didn't even exist, or like child molestation, it didn't even exist because we won't talk about it. So suppressed that it just proliferates with absolutely no rehabilitation for the offenders and no help for the victims. And but then what got me excited is I was like, but I'm watching her talk about it on TV now. Like before, the judge put her in jail. Now she's on TV bringing awareness to this important subject. Like change is happening, and that was exciting.
That's beautiful. And so if I guess if you're listening and you take away something from this call, Sam, what would that be?
I would say, really learn to like challenge where you're holding your taboos around sexuality. I think that we all need to do that, and to liberate our minds and our bodies, but in our own way. It isn't like the 1960s free sex. It's like, oh, just go have sex with everybody. Free your mind so you can have the sex life and the life that you want to have, and really get rid of shame. Like question where your shame came from, and it's not always easy because it does bring up uncomfortable moments. And I think, I don't know, I just like to see so many things change. Like I said, I'd like to create new systems of sex education for children that would be in schools. We had Clinton tried to appoint this one woman to do, I forget, she's the attorney general for health, and she had, I think she would put sex education for high schoolers. She said masturbation was safer than sex, and they fired her immediately.
Right.
But I mean, how ridiculous. Masturbation is safer than sex for teenagers. And actually I've talked to a teenage boy who said his dad told him, don't masturbate. A real man can have sex with a woman. You're like, oh my God, what is that father saying to his son? Like, go have sex. He's not even telling him to have safe sex. Because why does the father believe that? Somebody made him believe that. And he has shame. And so it's like generations and generations of misinformation and shame. So I think we have to just start to break that down and start to make sex positive,
Right.
like literacy, and create all new, paradigm for that. And that's what I'm excited to be doing, this reality TV show, like showing a whole different way of being with sexuality and turning it upside down for people.
And I'm glad the conversation can happen. If you're a man watching this, or a woman, I want you to think about what you believe to be right or wrong regarding sex. Growing up, I believe masturbation was bad. I believe having sex prior to being married was wrong. Remember, I grew up in a very conservative society like Sound. I know today how fucked up those beliefs were, and I would never want my child to go through those same beliefs. So if this call makes you uncomfortable, if you feel, you might know better, all I ask is understand that almost every belief we have about sex is nothing more than a code that was implanted in you, not by rational choice, but from generations past. You took it on
And
from your
usually from fear.
fathers. Say that again, Sal?
Usually from fear.
Usually from fear. Absolutely right. And it's up to us, the people on this call, this generation, to break that dogma down, to break those change. Let's not screw up our kids with the same bullshit that infected our heads. So we got to draw the line somewhere. Now, Sal, you also have for us a couple of systems to apply in our life towards having a healthier attitude and sexual lifestyle. Tell us.
Yeah. So I said, like, one of the first things is really learning to love your body and to understand nudity is good. So, not repressing the sexuality of our bodies and learning to just let that energy be free. So I say, make love with the lights on. I don't know how many people I talk to, that's a good question. Do you make love with the lights on or off? And why? Is it that you don't want to see your own body? Is it that you don't want to see your partner's body? But I think that's important. And, walk around your house naked and send your emails and do things naked for like an hour a day. I do. So liberate your body and get naked more often, and allow yourself to be seen naked more often. I think, and masturbate more. So I said, like, actually, allowing yourself to break that taboo and understand, that's a healthy thing to do. I think, and doing it in a healthy way. Again, I think if you take some of the shame off, then you'll do it in a healthy way. And the same as their people acted out in a worse way.
Well, let's go into that for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
How do you masturbate in a healthy way?
I think part of it is, again, that attitude. So if somebody feels still these old, like, shame and guilt about masturbating, they're going to do it in a way that has more violence to themselves or to someone else. I think that's where a lot of times, like watching porn, that's very desensitizing. Why is it desensitizing? Because you're numbing yourself. Your body wants something. Your primal sexual energy, which is natural, which is beautiful, wants something. And so you're still doing it, you're giving it to your body. This with men, a lot of times they're still masturbating, they're watching porn, but because of this really deep-rooted subconscious guilt and shame, they end up doing it in a way that they're watching more violent porn or less satisfying. Like, if we actually allow ourselves to enjoy it and be satisfied, I think we start to choose healthier and healthier things. Again, it's that idea, you're not a bad boy. It's like fishing, you're a bad boy. And it's so bad that, like, that your dick
Right.
gets hard, you want anything, and it's bad, 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 bad. And then you're like, I'm so bad.
So back to the topic of masturbation. Now,
Yeah.
there are books out there, okay, books like The Multi-Orgasmic Man.
Yes.
There are there are tons of philosophies out there. Now, I've met guys who say that they do not masturbate because there is some energetic loss when this happens. I met one man who said that when he hasn't masturbated for 20 years and his gray hairs turned a normal color again because he's keeping all this energy within his body. Or when he is masturbating, he isn't coming. Now, is there any truth in that?
Well, there is difference between, so again, to separate masturbation from ejaculation. And I think there is some truth to it that comes from a Taoist belief, that is that men's sexual power and energy and chi is in their semen. And this is actually equivalent to women's menstruation. So women can have many orgasms and not be tired. So that's why women can have multiple orgasms and keep going and not feel exhausted. Men ejaculate and they feel kind of tired because they are more depleted after ejaculating. But that's similar for women. When women have menstruation, they feel more tired, more depleted. So the same kind of life force or chi is in the menstruation that is in the semen or ejaculation. And so I think I think it's more about men learning to be able to control that and when they want to be able to ejaculate, and sometimes choosing to and sometimes not. I've seen a lot of men too, and a lot of the men who are super attached to that or sometimes feel a little stiff. And again, there feels like a certain fear or violence in that, like that they can't ever. And some of those older Taoist scriptures are like, don't ever give a drop of your semen to a woman, and I was like, well, now it's like the woman is the enemy again. My guru in India said, sometimes it's just so much pleasure for a woman to watch her partner ejaculate and have that much pleasure. So it's again, I think it's a dance. There's not black and white. Sexuality is definitely a rainbow spectrum, of what we enjoy and what's appropriate at different times.
What other systems would you recommend that we apply in our life?
I think I also recommend that people try tantric sex. So I have it can be a huge topic and field, but I've created a very, simple way for people to do that. It's like 2 ways to turn regular sex into tantric sex. Mm-hmm. And so let me actually make that 3, because the first one then would be intent. Again, when we can drop shame and really be present, and that intention alone will begin to change the whole experience and make it a more tantric experience. And then the second thing is an eye connection. So I teach people to do eye connection, and this eye connection can be done. It isn't always even sexual. It's something that I've taught, parents do with their children, or people can do with their friends. Be done in a non-sexual way, but it's very, very powerful during sex. And so I'll have people either do that as foreplay or during sex, holding a longer eye connection. And I've had everyone who's tried it tell me that they had a very strong response and different experience. I taught it to I had this one client who's a football player, and I told him, okay, the next time you have sex, keep that longer eye connection. And the next time I saw him, he's like, I don't know, Sam. He's like, I just don't want to connect with everyone that deeply. But, it just goes to show that in one time trying it, he could feel that it was an incredibly different experience than what he labeled as sex before. He could really feel that person much more deeply and much more intimately with the eye connection.
So this is simply staring into someone's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And another reason to do it with the lights on.
Exactly. Another reason to do it with the lights on. And you can do it, again, as foreplay, or, during intercourse. Holding each other's eye connection during orgasm is incredibly powerful. So that's another place that, give it a try. And then there is breathing at the same time. So that's the third thing to turn regular sex into tantric sex. So if you start to inhale and exhale and you can feel your breathing at the same time as your partner, and it's a special kind of breathing. I call it sexy Darth Vader breathing. But I tell people to take your first 2 fingers, put it at your, right here at the collarbone. And when you inhale and exhale, just tighten the back of your throat enough that you hear a little sound. So again, that sexy Darth Vader sound. Take as deep an inhale and a really deep exhale.
I see.
Everything gets, if you do that and you eat something, you'll be like, oh my God, that's so good. It tastes so much better, because it actually just gets you, again, out of the left brain and into the right brain of feelings. Right. And so I start to feel more, I smell more, I taste more, everything becomes more present, more sensual. And so that's part of the part of the Tantra. And they sound like simple things, but they will radically change the experience of having sex. Just, again, the intention, and then the eye connection, and then the breathing at the same time.
Now, you also said that one of your tips is to own your sexuality and learn to direct sexual energy to create the life you want.
Yes. And that's okay. So one of the things I teach people, and again, you don't even have to have a partner, and this looks a lot sexual, a lot less sexual on the outside, is a breathing meditation where you do the breath of fire, or the breath of arousal. So I teach people to do this breath that builds up a lot of what they call, when I travel to India, is Shakti. Your Shakti is your sexual power and energy to create life. So you could use that to create a human life, or you could learn to build that up in your own body and use it for creative genius, or for whatever you want. It's just the actual, it's like the real secret, right? What is it? It's actually feeling you have more of that Shakti primal life force to create anything that you want. And that's is it Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. He says that many of the very successful people, in the world had a higher sex drive or a higher sexual arousal. So it's really learning how to tap into the energy like that. And the fire breathing is just a rapid through your kind of belly and your nose, and almost like you're hyperventilating, and you would do it for at least a minute, and it's kind of like, and your belly is kind of pumping back and forth.
So this is a form of meditation?
It is. So we do that first, and then you sit and meditate in that energy.
I see.
Which is very powerful. And I also teach this to people as a way for people who sometimes have a hard time meditating because their mind never stops. So I say, well, don't just sit down and try and become silent first. Accelerate the breathing like this. Create all this energy and power. And then when you sit to meditate, it's very easy to meditate because you actually just created a surge of serotonin and dopamine and the actual like pleasure sensations that are the same as when you have an orgasm. So, after you have an orgasm, it's pretty easy to meditate. Is it, Vishen? I don't know. How's it for you?
It's true. Totally agree. Totally
Right?
agree.
You don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
You're like, leave me alone.
It may be completely different for men and women, but yes, it's absolutely true. So you've talked about getting rid of body shame, being able to have sex with the lights turned on, walking around naked. You've given us three simple tantra tips to apply to lovemaking.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was intent. The second one was eye gazing. The third one was synchronized breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've shared with us that simple breathing practice to do when meditating. Simple breathing in and out. I remember when you trained us on this particular form of meditation at A-Fest, you asked us to put our hand on our belly, and we should
Mm-hmm.
feel our belly going in and out.
Here, I'll give you.
Could you demonstrate that?
Yes. So you kind of have your belly like this, your hand on your belly, and so I'm breathing through my nose only, right? So it's don't breathe through your mouth because you want to build heat.
Right.
The whole idea is the sexual energy is like fire, it's passion, it's creativity, and has all this heat building in your body. So only breathe through your nose. We're going to create this pace, but you'll see my belly button, my hand on my belly. So I've got my hand here, and I do like, and the exhale, when I exhale, is like I have a string, and I'm emptying my belly. My belly's like a balloon, so when I inhale, it gets big like a balloon, and when I exhale, it gets empty. And then I just do that very quickly. So even just a few seconds like that, and I'm like really high.
So sound, what does that do? What does that add to a meditation practice?
So right, it awakens your Kundalini and your Shakti. So just even like I can describe what I feel right now. I feel like really high immediately. I feel all those surges of kind of what I call the happy hormones: serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. So then I've literally changed my brain chemistry in a faster way. It accelerates that release of the serotonin and the dopamine. So then when I sit to meditate, I'm actually, I'm really clean. My mind is empty. That breath work also slows down your mind. So it's a very practical tool. Instead of telling somebody just to sit down and try and meditate cold, now, like slow down your mind, think less. You actually just do this breath work, and you'll see you just feel you have less thoughts and you feel very blissful. So it creates this feeling of bliss and happiness And again, it's the same thing that happens when you have an orgasm, which is that release of the serotonin, the dopamine, and it's very, very actually pleasurable way to meditate, and really ignites your creativity. So, on a practical level, like I said, is really helpful for more creative genius. Get your juices flowing around that, and then using that for anything.
So for those of you listening, at our last A-Fest, which happened in Croatia. So A-Fest is a big event that Mind Valley puts on where like highly influential, high-level people all around the world apply to get a ticket, and it's by invite only. So you get a lot of celebrities, you get a lot of like people who run massive companies. The whole idea is to teach them personal growth so they can spread it, because these people, because of their TV shows, their books, they have a wide audience, right? So every morning we had several meditation instructors. Sam was one of them. And this particular exercise, the breathing in and out, this is what caused so many people who were new to meditation to experience incredible sensations. People spoke to me about feeling like they were a soul, feeling energy ripple through their body. So I was so amazed at the experiences people had. I ended up waking up at early in the morning to attend one of these meditations with Salm, even though I had a speech coming up. So I really want to recommend that you try this. Now, Salm, you had a couple more systems that I think are worth talking about.
The transformational sound breath. So
okay.
Sexual energy and the energy of your voice and expression are very closely linked together. So one of the things that people have blockages around their sexuality is just a lot of negative emotions. How do we get rid of them? And so again, an accelerated practice to get rid of them that I learned in India is a Kundalini practice. And I call it transformational sound breath. And you take that same idea that we had at the belly button, but I have people inhale, raise their arms. And on the exhale, you go, ha. And when you, ha, you're going to pull the belly button back in that same way. So it's an inhale and then exhale, ha. Inhale, exhale, ha. Inhale and exhale, ha. 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 And again, just a few. And so when I'm sitting here right now, I just did a few, and I feel really expanded. I feel tingling energy in my body. I feel really joyful. I feel like an infinite amount of energy and creative energy, and I feel really turned on. Like I feel like turned on for life,
Right.
And so again, that can be sex, that can be creating my next project, but I'm just on. It really lights you up.
That's beautiful, and that's something that so many people are looking for. So you said this takes about a minute a day.
If you did the breath of fire for a minute and then the transformation sound breath for a minute, and in between you just took a few breaths to check in with yourself, it would literally, I promise you'll be more productive. I promise you'll have more energy. I promise that if you have been stuck with chronic fatigue, depression, it'll start to just turn all of that around. I've worked with people with PTSD, and anything from people who just feel slightly dissatisfied and not, excited about their life and passionate about their work, to people with very serious issues. And this is the most powerful and effective tool I've ever learned, because it's almost like it's accelerated meditation, and it's perfect for people. It's perfect for people who already meditate, because it'll give them more juice, more of that creative juice and flow, but especially for people who struggle with meditation because their mind won't stop. This is the perfect tool for them.
Finally, Salm, you've mentioned the word Kundalini several times. Could you just clarify what that is for people who may have never heard that word before?
Yeah, Kundalini, and again, the beliefs and systems that particular word for this energy comes from India. The energy itself, you'll discover, go to an African shaman, you go to a shaman in South America, they're in touch. They know how to put their finger on the pulse of it. Maybe they have a different word for it. But where I studied it was in India. And again, these experiences of spirit and God in your body transcend the dogmatic beliefs. So is it like when you have a moment, when I breathe like that and I sit, I feel a sense of connection to source and something greater than me. And that's not a belief. That's my actual reality in my body happening right now. Whereas I feel like in religion, some people say you should believe that. And if you don't have that experience, something's wrong with you. Right. But that's why this is so empowering, is people get in touch with their own power and their own connection to source, and this feeling of being able to turn on this Kundalini energy. And so Kundalini, the word kunda means bulb. And the idea is that all of us have a bulb of our primal life force, and it's in our sexual center of our body. And so, because of shame, because of repression, most people never access that. And even if they're having sex in a way that they aren't present enough because of shame, because of whatever, that they still don't access this very powerful, what we call sleeping potential energy. So when you learn how to activate that Kundalini, that bulb, you learn how to turn on the switch, and then you're turned on.
Mm.
And those are the deeper states of meditation, of creativity, of art, of trance, of ceremonies and rituals and prayer that people are talking about, or, orgasm, sexual connection. All those are a similar, very heightened state of feeling. I think when we're in those states, we just feel grateful to be alive. And I think that's one of the best marks of a spiritual practice, or any or a good life, is that you're grateful to be alive and want to connect to other people. And I teach one other, the meditation KISS, and that's the one where we do it with another person, because a lot of meditation people only learn to do alone. And I hear people again and again saying, oh, I'm fine when I'm sitting and meditating. Then I go, then my wife talks to me, my kid talks to me, I'm at work, and somebody disrupts my Zen. And I was like, well, we have to learn to meditate together. Everything from just like from friendship to actually when we have sex can be a meditation. Any of the things we're doing can become that. But the KISS, and I like, let's try it on camera here.
Okay.
So I've never done this. This is my first. I'm a virgin to this.
Doing it on camera?
You and me are doing it for the first time. So we're doing it on Skype. I've done a lot of things on camera already. So we're going to take your right hand and put it on your partner's, their heart, so the left side of their chest. So here we're trying to like make that stimulation, and then we would breathe at the same time. So kind of imagine, and now put your other hand over your own heart. So if you were here, Vishen, your hand would be on my heart, and I would take one hand and put it over your hand, and then my other hand would go on your heart, and we kind of form this connection with each other.
It would kind of look like this, but with two people.
With you actual contact. But I can feel it. Can you feel it? We can feel it. Even it's still good. So and then what we do is we would hold the eye connection while we do this. So touching each other's hearts, holding the eye connection, and then the breathing at the same time. So inhale at the same time, and exhale at the same time, and inhale and exhale. And the inhale is receiving. So inhale, I'm receiving my connection to you. And exhale, I'm giving my energy to you. And inhale, I receive that connection from you. And exhale, I'm giving back to you. And it's just even that, just I can feel,
right.
You just become very present. You know, and I think that's one thing in our world I think there's a shame in just connection. Even this kind of connection. I think that somewhere along the line, we got so afraid of being vulnerable or naked, like literally naked, like showing who I am, being judged, or not totally comfortable, having some shame about who I am. And so practices like this, like just getting naked in any kind of connection. And one of my favorite things is after A-Fest, some people had gone home and taught it to their kids. And somebody sent me on Facebook, there's a picture of two kids doing the KISS meditation together. I was like, I'm going to the cute meter is killing me. Plus, like, how amazing if those kids grow up doing that. They'll already know how to connect like that and have that kind of deeper intimacy.
What I found interesting about it is that it's uncomfortable. I can't go, firstly, for those of you listening, this isn't just something that is done with a male-female thing. At A-Fest, Sound led a session on this, a breakout group, and we had guys doing it, men doing it with men, women doing it with women, sometimes men and women doing it together. So I remember doing this.
We had a few threesomes.
Yeah. I remember doing this with a guy friend of mine who's an interior designer, right? His name is Seth. And firstly, for men, it can be uncomfortable staring into another man's eyes. But doing it with Seth, we kept that eye gaze. And what I found really interesting is it just seemed to reinforce this friendship that I had with this other male. It felt uncomfortable, but only for about 30 seconds. And then it just seemed natural, being able to look into another person's eyes and to be able to truly see them and connect. And I think it just had an absolutely beautiful healing sensation to it. I did it with a woman, and she broke down in tears. And I asked her after the session what happened, and she says, I felt so safe, so trusted. I felt so much love that it was beautifully overpowering for me. And so I think this is a beautiful exercise. Now I'm thinking, can I do this with people in my management team? I realize it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be a harder sell doing this in business, but I definitely want to try this with my son, my daughter, my wife at a certain point.
Yeah. No, and I think, and definitely, but I think team building things, again, I think you have to say, this might make you uncomfortable, but this is
You're
really
right.
great for team building.
You're
You
right.
know, and
You're right.
let's break down these barriers and our communication will be better afterwards.
You're right. Now I'm wondering, yes, I think I do have to figure out a way to bring this into my company just to see what would happen.
There you go. But
But
people go along with things usually when you just have to preface it by, this may make you uncomfortable. And then everybody's like, okay, I'll do it.
but it's insane. It's insane. It occurs to me how the insanity of our modern society is they take all these things that truly build human love, human connection, and make them wrong, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, because like you said, it's this, we, instead of being able to be present, you think, what does this mean? Like, or if I'm connecting with this woman and she starts crying, like, what does this mean for later? Does it mean that we're supposed to do something together or not do something, instead of just literally witnessing and having that empathy for another human being and seeing yourself in them and them in you, and then seeing both of you as just souls. And it actually does build your oxytocin. So oxytocin is the love hormone and makes us able to bond and also to feel safe.
Right.
And I think that safety and that trust, right before that you finally feel the safety and trust, is everything kind of comes up that feels uncomfortable, unsafe, scary. But they're just ideas. Again, those are fear-based ideas. And when you break through those, you kind of open up into this a bigger version of yourself, because the shame, the repression, the fear is keeping us a lot tighter and smaller than we really are.
Beautiful. Anything else to share, Sam?
Well, I mean, I just had to say, I really just enjoyed being at A-Fest and meeting you, and how amazing and open that those people were, like I said, really intelligent people, but really wanting to be in their hearts. And so I feel like that was a utopian, that was like a miniature utopian society for 4 days. So if we can do it for 4 days, we should be able to manage to make it last longer. Start building on that, level up and build on that. And then the other thing I just like to tell people is, I hope that, this has challenged you, that this has maybe stirred some ideas in you. Sometimes one conversation can start to a domino effect of making a lot of changes in your life. And so sex is such a key piece of who we are, and how we live and what we believe about ourselves. So maybe some little thing changed for you in this conversation today, and also to try some of those techniques that we had, because even just the fire breath, transformational sound breath, 1 minute, do it again tomorrow. I promise you'll just start to feel so lit up and turned on.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for sharing
And
all of this.
love. Make love to yourself. Make love to each other. Make love to your food. Make love. Just make love.
Thank you, Sam. That was beautiful. Thank you. Now, if people want to learn a little bit more about you, what is your website?
It's www.psalmisadora.com. And I have free videos on there, and my tantra massage videos, and all kinds of, some of these systems are on there. Some of them are coming soon. So definitely go and check out a lot of the resources that I have on there.
Thank you. You're amazing. Thanks for joining us on Consciousness Engineering.
Yes.